Thanks for listening to the AZ Wildcats podcast. I'm your host, Mike Luke, with William Brad Allis. I apologize. I had a few technical issues right here, but nothing that Jacob Franklin couldn't fix by just being there. All right, Brad Allis. Hello, Brad Allis. How are you doing?
I'm okay, Michael Luke.
All right, we got a lot to get to today. We're going to talk basketball. We're going to talk football. We're going to talk some conference realignment, all that fun stuff. But first, Brad, watching Arizona yesterday, and the Israeli team that I think we thought was really bad, and I still think they were really bad, but they barely beat Kansas State today. Kansas State was in the Elite Eight. I came away from this thinking that, first of all, Keshad Johnson is unlike anybody that Arizona's had here in the Tommy Lloyd era. Certainly not the best player, but as far as athleticism, toughness, big man, he is somebody to be very excited about.
Yeah, he's that prototypical 6'7" kind of combo forward who leans more to the four, like he was advertised. I think I mentioned on Twitter yesterday that there hasn't been a guy built like him really since the highs of the Miller era. And I would say he's built like Jamel Horn. His game maybe, and again, he's not nearly as good, but his game's a little more like Aaron Gordon. Mm-hmm. He's very athletic, very strong, finishes at the rim. He had that little driving hook that if he can hit that on a consistent basis, could be pretty dangerous. But yeah, he's kind of what you expect out of that, frankly, that San Diego State power forward.
Right. And I thought too, just watching, like I said, watching him, you don't really realize until you're watching him in game just how explosive he is. And I thought that Jack Murphy, when we had him on a while back, I thought he was blowing a little bit of smoke when he said, I think Keshad's going to be in the NBA. And I came away from that thinking that he's got a chance, William.
Yeah, Keshad right now, to me, he has to have a much more consistent jumper and ability to score to play in the NBA. He certainly has NBA athleticism. NBA length as a 3, but he's playing the 4. So I think he has to me, he does have sort of a hard row ahead of him. Sorry about the dog barking.
No, you're good. Kind of we're dog friendly on this show. I'm bringing Ted Wardo to practice on next week.
So does he have an NBA athleticism? Yes. He doesn't have an NBA game. That's his problem. He would have to be a 3 and D guy. And while I think he might be able to be a D guy, certainly the 3 does not appear to be there yet.
Right. The 3 doesn't have to appear to be there, but that's also something that, you've got other players out there that can do that. What I was just interested in, too, in this offseason was what was Lloyd going to prioritize? And I think a big thing that he was going to prioritize was athleticism and strength. And I think you saw a little bit of that right there. I mean, Jaden Bradley he didn't stand out, but you certainly noticed him out there. He physically looks the part. This is definitely a unique team that we haven't really seen here under Tommy Lloyd, and I think it's going to be a tougher route as the season goes on there, William.
Yeah, and I don't know how their toughness is going to be when they get and play American college players, but I will tell you that Polyem and Krivas look like big, strong, grown men. Mm-hmm. In fact, again, kind of joking around on Twitter. If you told me Polyem was 27 and just got out of the Lithuanian army, I'd believe. Did you see the picture they posted that guy on the Arizona Athletics?
There's no way he's 18 or 19.
No, and Krivas, again, is pretty strong. So, again, they still have to show me they're tough, but at least they have the physical capabilities of being those type of players to mix in with, your three guards are athletic and are physically capable. Ballo, although again, I think he needs to play his way into shape, which is a little bit of a concern, is a big physical guy. So you've now got 5-6 guys who are perfectly capable of playing that more physical style when needed. Again, Arizona's not going to go out there and play like the Mick Cronin Cincinnati teams.
Right.
But they have to be able to mix it up from time to time, and I think they can do it.
All right, let's talk about before we talk about the Lithuanians, though, let's talk about Oumar Ballo. Again, it's not the end of the world, but it's just very disappointing when a player that has a lot of expectations on him, that's worked hard to get to where he was, I'll just be frank, when he comes in fat. I mean, that's disappointing, and it's not something you want to see out of your fourth or fifth year senior. I don't like the Isaiah Fox regimen.
No, and some guys are very capable of playing their way into shape in the month of informal practices and the first month of practice. But as a fifth year guy who had his best season ever last year when coming in his best shape, it's not a wise decision. And again, it's not like he can rest on his laurels.
Because he's limited. We got to remember here, and again, he's a good player, don't get me wrong, but this isn't Shaquille O'Neal here where, all right, we still know by the time the NBA Finals hit, he's going to be 38-17. He's not that type of dude. He's not quick twitch. He's kind of a lumberer, and that to me is what was just disappointing, is that he needs to continue to improve his conditioning and his athleticism, not – well, you know what? I'll start doing that in August. That's what was just disappointing to me.
No, again, like I said, he came in phenomenal shape last year, had an all Pac-12 caliber season. And again, if he's not in shape come November, Tommy Lloyd will start Krivas and Vesar. As iffy as he kind of looked yesterday, your boy Dylan Anderson is a capable guy.
Be nice, William.
For 5 or 10 minutes. So it is disappointing. Again, I'm not saying he won't be in shape come November 1st, but we shouldn't be having those questions on, August 15th.
Right. One thing about, though, that we got to talk about a little bit is the international recruiting. I think there's been some people that have been a little concerned about it because obviously Adama Ball wasn't a hit. Henry Vesar very much up in the air. I don't know that Philly B is ever going to be a contributor, but watching Krivas on the post and then watching Pauly M as well, these guys look different than the previous ones that have come in. These guys both look like players right here, and I think it's going to be something that's going to be fun to chart, and I think they're going to be instant impact type guys. Now, to what extent, I don't know, but they're both playing.
Yeah, I think they seem physically more on the track of where Tubelis was when he arrived on campus, and that was a guy who was ready to plug and play. I don't know how good the comparison to Matherin, because again, I think there's a big difference playing basketball in Canada than playing pro ball in Lithuania, which is essentially what these guys did. But they do look more ready to plug and play than say Henry Vesar, who again I think we could be very happy with by the time he leaves Arizona. But everyone has a different learning curve. Now let's see what they do when they're midway through a semester, when they're trying to get acclimated to school and life in America. And although they've been in America, a couple of them for only a few weeks, they're basically back on their home turf overseas. So, my guess would be their families are there, things like that. So let's see what they do. But physically, they certainly look up to the part and maybe a little more advanced, both in terms of game and build than some of the other guys.
One thing that I think that maybe some people, maybe including myself, got a little bit ahead of here, I want to talk about it, Kylan Boswell. I think that Kylan Boswell is going to be a very, very good point guard here at the U of A. But watching him now, the two-and-done hype might be a little much because, again, you and I have seen two-and-done type players here and what they look like. Mike Bibby was the epitome of that two-and-done player. Granted, he was in a different era, but Kylan Boswell doesn't look anything like Mike Bibby from an impact perspective. And that's not a put down towards Kylan Boswell. That's just a statement that how much different two-and-done type players generally look.
I've never been on the thought that he's a legit two-and-done. And he could be an illegit two-and-done. We've seen guys who shouldn't go, who go. But to me, he just doesn't look like yet an NBA point guard. He doesn't look, frankly, he doesn't look athletic enough. He's not built like one. So he's going to have to go above and beyond what a guy built, frankly, more like Caleb Love has to do, more like Jaden Bradley has to do. He's a very good player, and that doesn't mean, again, some of the best players in Arizona history didn't sniff the NBA because of what type of player they were. So let's just, pump the brakes. But yeah, I think the 2 and done has always been curious. Just more, again, it's
you just look at him and he doesn't quite look like those guys that come in, and you could tell that Jared Bayless, even though he wasn't a great pro, you could tell that Jared Bayless wasn't going to be in college long.
And I use a different, and it's, again, the guy didn't have a great career, but look at a guy like Khalil Tate. Phenomenal athlete, had a good month, didn't have a shred of NFL game in him.
Right.
So if he could have done that for 4 years, what he did in that one Magic October, he still wasn't probably going to play in the NFL. And that's maybe what we'll look at Kylan Boswell, who is barely 6 foot, stocky, not long. He just may not fit in today's modern NBA. Again,
he's got a Stanley Havili build.
Does he, if he starts showing that he's an elite shooter, he's an elite distributor, then yeah, he can play his way. Because we've also seen guys built like that who do play in the NBA, but typically they are a little bit taller.
We got to give you, Brad Allis, a lot of credit here on Mount Crevis. When Mount Crevis committed, I will admit that I looked at him. I was like, that's going to be a project. Mount Crevis is not a project. Sure, he's not the fastest guy in the world, but he's also legitimately 7'2". He's got legitimate skills, back to the basket skills, and a little bit of a jump shot. At this time next year, Brad, he's going to be the starting center at the U of A.
Yeah, and again, what I liked about Crevis, I looked at his tape, and you've done it. You and I have done it, where you try to evaluate not only what can they do now, but what can they do later. And the first thing that jumped out at me was, while not fast at all, he's mobile, though. He moves well. He has good footwork, which you expect from it. Again, there's a Tubelis comparison there. Tubelis moves very well. Tubelis is not fast. But then I looked at him physically, and he was physically put together well. He had peaks on the shoulder, 2 peaks, but, he's halfway there to the full set. He had length. He wasn't built like a string. Vasar came in last year, and he – wasn't.
He looked scrawny, like a deer in the headlights.
He wasn't scrawny, but he wasn't. He didn't look like he'd been in the gym. Mm-hmm. Anderson was skinny when he got here. Now he's starting to put. Ballo was thick when he got here. Krivas is built. He probably still needs about 10 pounds of muscle, but he was built like what you want to see a 20-year-old big man look like. And with the shot blocking ability, with some of his timing on things, I thought he had a chance to be pretty darn good. And I still am very high on him.
All right, Brad. How's your sleep going, Brad?
Here and there.
All right, but let's just say you're like William Brad Allis and you need a little bit of time to sleep. OG's is here for you. We highly recommend you check out OG's online at ogsbrands.com and on Instagram at ogsbrands. You can find their products at your local dispensary. Must be 21 years or older. And again, all kinds of good stuff. You got the pink lemonade gummies, limited edition, by the way. And again, all kinds of good stuff. Fruits, watermelons, red apple, peach. Do check out OG's. It's what's sweeping the nation right now. And Game Time. Now, Brad Allis, you have used Game Time before. This is correct, is it not?
Yeah.
All right. Here's what we got. Game Time is the place to go to be able to get your last-second tickets. We've had people do this before. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code word PHNX for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code PHNX for 20% off or $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last-minute tickets, lowest prices guaranteed. Okay. But yeah, I believe Crevis is going to be a multi-year starter. Maybe a little bit of a Shemet Karnowski, a little bit different, obviously, but maybe that kind of impact. Can Williams see that?
I mean, obviously, very, very different players. Karnowski, a bigger, thicker guy. But no, I think Crevis has a chance to fill a role that Arizona has only had a few times, really, over the years. That's a shot-blocking big man. Obviously, he's not as fluid an athlete as Lauren Woods. He's not definitely not as explosive an athlete as a Christian Coloco, but I think he could maybe put up similar block numbers to those guys. And again, maybe a more well-rounded offensive player than either of those guys were. He's not going to get the transition dunks very often. He's not going to, I don't know if you're going to hit him on the lob, but he's a guy, I think you could dump it down and he can get you that hook shot. He can get you that little jumper. And then again, if he can block shots and rebound, that's huge.
What I like seeing about Paulie M as well is that Paulie M was looking to get his. Paulie M came out there because one of the things I worry about the international players from time to time is obviously it's an adjustment to the American game, but I don't like watching the players out there that are timid and are kind of weenies. He came out there and he was looking to get his. He had a dunk, he had a three, and that's what I like to see. And you could tell that he was saying, I'm going to continue to do this right here. I was very impressed by Paulie M.
And again, different type of athlete, but is maybe the best comparison for his game Derek Williams? That ability to kind of put it on the floor and drive for the dunk. He can shoot from the outside. Arizona just hasn't had many successful combo forwards, and really Derek Williams is one of the few. And I think that could be a guy, again, very not necessarily similar athletes, and most people, for whatever reason, most people really cringe when you do the cross-racial comparisons.
Oh, we don't cringe on this show. We're doing it right now. We've done it twice already.
But to me, that might be the closest in terms of pure combo forward. And again, I'm putting a lot of stock into a really good 7 minutes against what's probably the equivalent of, the over 35
maybe
Israeli B-League All-Stars, although they played well today. But that's what I saw from Paulie M. It's just kind of that somewhat similar to some of the things Derek Williams did. And I'm not calling him a National Player of the Year or first-round draft pick.
You're saying that Paulie M is going to be the second pick in the draft. That's what you just said.
Yeah, I did. Exactly. Maybe that's the Lithuanian draft, but we'll see.
Right. All right. Now, let's move over to a little bit of U of A football here. And we'll talk about BetMGM here in a little bit. Brad, I'm going to go on record when we were talking on the post-game shows. This is a good team. And again, it's not a great team by any means, but it is a good team. It's different from last year in that you're like, all right, well, they should be really improved. You look across the board, this is a pretty good team right here. We're going to talk offense, and we're going to talk defense and what Dwayne Akina's meant. But so far, very impressed by what I've seen. And the talent level on offense is absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, I think this is probably the most talented team since the end of the Rich Rod era.
Certainly got the most NFL prospects.
Yeah, and I think the question to me is, it may not result in any more wins. It's a tough schedule, and there's a lot of parity in the dying embers of the Pac-12 here. You look from Cal up, everyone's kind of, again, the top of the league is very, very good. But, from Oregon State down to Cal, I'm not sure there's a huge amount of difference. Right. So you really could be doing these things where it's just one or two plays per game is the difference between whether you're going bowling and whether you're a 4 or 5 win team. That being said, this team's more talented than they have been. They have some holes still. They still lack some depth, but this is the best Arizona team in 5 or 6 years.
And offensively, there's not a lot of question marks. Now, we'll get to the quarterback last, but as far as the starting offensive line, I think you have to go back to Stoops to find something that where you have – listen, Jordan Morgan, your guy, Marana native, at tackle is an NFL player. Jonas Avenea, in my opinion, is the best pro prospect on the team at that other tackle. Wendell Moe is going to be a starter here as long as he's here. Polito has been fantastic in camp. Josh Baker is solid at center. It is – now, listen, the depth isn't great, but it is a really, really good starting offensive line right there, William.
Yeah, about 5 to 7 this team. It's as good as it's been in a long, long time. But that's the problem. You suffer one injury here, one injury there. And, I think Lange is a nice player you can plug in. There's a couple other guys you can plug in.
Leif Magnuson. Let's not forget about our guy, Leif Magnuson.
But, once you start dipping deep into it, you could be in some trouble.
Right. And then you look at the receivers. The receivers are obviously fantastic. T-Mac, by the way, do you see those pictures of how buff T-Mac is now?
Yeah, he looks good. Yeah,
so you got T-Mac, you got Cowing, Montana Lamonius Craig, who another guy that really looks the part. Then you've got obviously Kevin Green, a lot of other guys in that spot. The wide receiver unit, stop me if you've heard this before, is absolutely loaded again, Brad.
Yeah, I think in years past you could go with what Green, Brown, Riley, and that would be better than some of the units that have been trotted out there, and those guys may barely see the field.
Right. And then tight end, Kean Burnett, Chester Burnett's kid. I believe he's looked really good. He's a lot bigger. I think you're going to see a lot of 2 tight end sets with him and Tanner McLaughlin as well. Very impressed by what I've seen, though, so far from those guys as well. I mean, Jayden de Laura, who we're going to get to in a minute, he can't be complaining about the options or the protection around him.
No, and you have some receivers who can catch the ball as well. So, yeah, there are plenty of targets. There are plenty of there should be, again, if it's coached up right, plenty of options for him where he doesn't have to always force the ball, whether you look down underneath for a back in the flats, a tight end in the seam, things like that. But, yeah, Arizona, from a skill position standpoint, is as good as it's been, certainly dating back to Stoops and maybe to the Tomey era.
All right, now we got to talk about de Laura here. He's obviously Rich Carrillo's guy, Jayden de Laura, right here. De Laura, to me, is – and we talked about it talked about it a little bit last week. When you've got this much talent around you offensively, I know you're not going to have all great games. I get that. I just can't have the huge peaks and valleys that we had because he's capable of big nut games. But when you have a tough game, make it be something like 17 of 30 for 240 yards and 1 touchdown and no picks. It can't be the 79 yards passing and 4 interceptions type situation. That's what I need to see out of Jayden de Laura this year. And I think he should be able to do it.
Yeah, I mean, consistency is going to be the key. Yeah, he can't have those huge crater games. You can't have, those games where, again, he throws multiple picks where they just don't move the football. And frankly, they shouldn't. I think if you're going to have a bad game in this day and age, it has to be where you just falter in the red zone and you settle for field goals. But the defense is not going to be good enough to keep you in one of these 21-20 games. You're going to have to score touchdowns, and you got to take pressure off the defense. And a lot of it is up to de Laura. And again, I think de Laura has played well in his, last year in his time in the Pac-12, but he's not a surefire, sure thing like, the top 3 or 4, 5 guys in the league are.
Right. And I think that's a little bit of the issue there. Now, let's talk about Noah Fifita. Because people know my answer to this. Can a 5'7" or 5'8" quarterback who throws the ball 35 times a game work in college football?
It can.
We've never seen it before. That's why I asked.
No, we have. What do you mean we haven't?
5'7", 5'8"?
Kyler Murray?
He's 5'10" and a half. It's a big difference. I mean, that's what he measured at the combine, and those are actually real numbers there, Brad.
It's the same strategy, though. Once you get under sub 7, 6 foot, it's all the same strategy. Roll out. Yes, you can be successful. It's been done. It's been done at mid-major levels. Hasn't been done in heck, Keith Smith's 5'9". He didn't throw 35 times a game because Dick told me he wouldn't let him. They would have won more games.
They would have won more games. Yes.
So yeah, it can be done, but it's not a sure thing. But you're also bringing in a quarterback next year who's probably closer to 5'10" than he is 6 foot. So figure out that playbook, figure out the rollouts, figure out the passing lanes, things like that. Yes, it can be successful. It's tougher. It means a little bit different scheming. Same thing though. You can have a 6'5" quarterback who's a statue back there. You also have limitations. I think your ideal in this modern game of football is about 6'3" and mobile. Right. So, but you're Arizona. You have to take your chances on guys, whether the guy's a little bit too small, whether the guy's not in a hotbed, whether the guy's got recruited over at his prior school. That's what you have to bring in now to create that tradition of success.
All right, now defensively here, we need to talk about this because Duane Akina came in. And I'm not at all surprised by what I've seen. First of all, he's the most fiery coach out there. They found out a way to make him a coach on the field, even though he's an analyst. Very good work there, Jedd Fisch. I believe he's going to be the position coach next year. This is with all due respect because Chuck Cecil is U of A royalty. Chuck Cecil and Duane Akina as coaches right now are not comparable. I think Duane Akina is a far more impactful guy. I believe he will be probably somewhere in that secondary. But, Brad, seeing him at practice every day, seeing him on the sideline for a young coaching staff, for a young defensive staff, I can't think of anybody better to have than Dwayne Aquina back there.
And I'll tell you, I've had two different people. One being one of the middle school football coaches at Flowing Wells Middle School, and one being one of the baseball dads on Tyler's baseball team. That's all they want to talk about. Dwayne Aquina. Did you see Aquina's back? Aquina's on the field. Did you hear him talk? Oh, I love Aquina. And one of the guys is about my age. One of the guys is a little bit old. Yeah, but we all remember Aquina. We know what he is. Save for that little stint as offensive coordinator that didn't go real well. He talked about Arizona royalty. And again, Chuck Cecil for what he did on the field. But Dwayne Aquina's proven he's for a lot of people, college football royalty. And you find a way to get that guy in the field, whether that's, in some ways they got a gift, and you hate to say it, but with Ricky Hundley's health issues, and whether Hundley comes back, because I thought Hundley did do a good job with his players last year. Maybe it is moving Cecil back to an analyst role, or maybe someone else leaves the program in the offseason. But you absolutely keep Dwayne Aquina on the field, interacting with players as much as you can for as long as he still has that fire.
Yeah, and the thing is, too, and Lamont Lovett and I were talking about this at the scrimmage, is that if you're just looking at defensive back coaches in college football history, you're not going to find somebody more accomplished. Now, again, I'm not saying he's the best. I'm not saying he isn't the best, but you're not going to find somebody more accomplished that has worked with better players. I mean, he really is at the apex of that position right there. That's why it's so important to have him. And when you watch their practices, when you go and you hear him yelling all the time about swarming, gang tackling, getting after, Arizona's defense was interesting last year because it combined a lack of talent with a lack of gusto, for lack of a better term. Dwayne Aquina is changing. Dwayne Aquina is going to change that, even if it's slowly. There's going to be a difference.
Yeah. Say what you will about Jacob Manu, the athlete. Jacob Manu fits the Dwayne Aquina defense because he is a play with your hair on fire, fly to the ball.
David Fick type.
Heck, and he didn't coach him, but a Scooby Wright type. I mean, Scooby Wright, there's a reason Scooby Wright can't play in the NFL, but he puts up monster numbers everywhere else because save for the NFL, effort gets you everywhere. That's why he can be a two-time USFL champion. That's why he could be a Heisman Trophy vote recipient. And that's the kind of guy Jacob Manu is. And I think a lot of the guys you're bringing, when you bring in guys from Georgia and for some of these programs, they know how to fly to the ball. They know how to play with intensity. And that can make up, especially on your front seven, for some of that lack of talent.
Right. Now, we got to talk about Justin Flowe a little bit here. But first, William Brad Allis is maybe a little skeptical about the over of 5 wins for U of A football this year. I am not skeptical, and I am telling you to go to BetMGM right now and take the over on it. We told you last year over 2.5. It hit easy. This one will hit easy as well. Sign up for BetMGM. Use bonus code PHNX. There's a few different offers depending on where you live. But for our Arizona audience, place your first bet offer and receive up to $1,000 back in bonus bets if it loses. Check out the show notes for full details. Again, BetMGM, take the over on the University of Arizona Wildcats. You will thank me later. Now, let's hear Shane Diefenbach with the disclaimer.
Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Colorado, D.C., Illinois, Indiana, Kansas, Louisiana, Maryland, Mississippi, New Jersey, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Tennessee, Virginia, West Virginia, Wyoming. Call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369 New York. Call 1-800-327-5050 Massachusetts. 21 plus to wager. Please gamble responsibly. Call 1-800-NEXT-STEP Arizona, 1-800-522-4700 Nevada, 1-800-BETS-OFF Iowa, 1-800-270-7117 for confidential help Michigan, 1-800-981-0023 Puerto Rico in partnership with Kansas Crossing Casino and Hotel. Visit BetMGM.com for terms and conditions. U.S. promotional offers not available in D.C., Kansas, Nevada, New York, or Ontario.
All right. Something that we see all the time, and you've seen this from day one because you've been covering recruiting since, since Coniel Norman was coming up, if I'm not mistaken. Is this correct, Brad?
A little bit after that, but
not that far off.
I did see Mike Bibby play in high school.
I saw Mike Bibby play in high school. I saw him play at South Point. Were you at this game? You were not at that game.
The difference was you were a child and I was, in my 20s.
True. All right. But generally when you have a 5, and this is not meant to besmirch the kid at all here because he's been fantastic for what Arizona wanted. But I always tell people this, generally when you get a kid that used to be a 5-star and a high 5-star, like the mega high 5-star, and they don't play where they're at or nobody's really sad to see him leave, generally it's because, they could be solid, but they're just not they're just not quite that dude that they were hyped up to be. I think that's kind of the case with Justin Flowe. Now, listen, Justin Flowe is going to play because he's kind of your typical old school linebacker, plug the gap. But in this day and age, if you can't pick up the passing game on defense, it's difficult for you to play. And so I think people thinking he was going to come in and be an all-conference type dude, probably not going to be seeing that.
Yeah, and I think the problem with Flowe is he has phenomenal athleticism. But he's an old school linebacker, and the game is changing.
Right.
It's kind of the same thing. Running backs have changed, and there's a reason, there's a reason Saquon Barkley can't get paid.
Right.
There's a reason linebackers can't get paid. The game is changing. So I don't know whether the answer for Justin Flowe is to use him on running downs, to maybe eventually see if he can move to his undersized edge rusher and try to use his speed. He's a phenomenal athlete, but he may not be quite good enough athlete to go and cover, backs in the flat, cover tight ends, things like that. We'll see how he adjusts. Because again, he has phenomenal ability, but just where does he fit?
Right. Ephesians Prysock on the defensive side. That's who I believe is the best NFL prospect on the defensive side of the football right there. About 6'2", ex-4-star kid. You could tell that they expect him to take a big jump this year. And obviously the defense is unproven to a certain extent, but Prysock is definitely the guy that I'm going to be watching in that secondary to see if he can become that dude that I think that the coaching staff certainly hopes that he can be.
I think both of those corners have a chance to be pretty special.
Mm-hmm.
They're both bigger guys, younger guys, rangy guys, kind of that modern corner. So I think Prysock's ahead of him. I think both.
You like Takario Davis, is what you're saying.
I do like Takario Davis. Yeah. I think again, talking to someone yesterday, there's a reason Christian Roland Wallace left.
Right.
And it's because he wasn't guaranteed a starting spot.
Right. Because these dudes just, again, Christian Roland Wallace was a solid corner for sure. These dudes have higher upside. That's the best way that I can put that.
Yeah, they do. And again, younger, bigger, maybe a little more fast. Yeah. So you mix those two guys in. Now you got to get help from the other three spots. The other three spots still concern me. I'm not sure who the nickel corner is. It looks like it's probably going to be Stooks. I know there were some people counting on is it Yates to come in, but it seems like he's down on the depth chart. Still waiting for some safeties to really step up. It looks like Taylor's probably the guy, but who's the other guy? So there's still a lot of questions in the secondary, but I think, I know Celestine has looked pretty good too. So maybe he's your third corner. And if so, then that's a nice group with some speed, but you need all five defensive backs to be solid. And right now you've got kind of two that you know about.
All right, now NPOB just sent a funny tweet. The great NPOB1. All right, I need to help because again, Brad, you're a much smarter person than I am. Take me through when it became the idea that you can't have small players return kicks, because when Arizona recruited Rayshon Speedy Luke, fam, I was under the impression he would be returning kicks. Generally, small, fast players return kicks. And not only has he not returned kicks, it seems like it's only been until about this week that they've even considered having him return kicks. I don't understand this.
The only thing about Luke, and this is, it's not because he's small, but because he's small, it's more noticeable. Apparently, he's having trouble holding on the football.
Right.
So if you can't hold on the football, you can't run back kicks. Who was the guy? There's a reason they went with Ryan Eidson inside the 20. If you remember Ryan Eidson, walk-on wide receiver, like that, not a big guy.
I was going to say, a pretty small dude, wasn't he?
Small dude. He was from Brady's high school.
Junipero Serra.
No, De La Salle.
Brady's from Serra.
He's from Serra, but De La Salle is where this kid was.
He's from Leon Callan's high school. How about that?
But Eidson had hands. Eidson didn't drop anything. So they would put back. Ryan Eidson was probably 5'9", 140, 150. And most of the time, was he fair catching? Yes. But he didn't drop anything. So that's what you need. And again, you want a guy who can be a game breaker, but you cannot turn over the football, especially on punt return, kickoff return. You just can't. So I don't care if Speedy Luke is the next Devin Hester on 50% of the time. if 50% of the time he was Sky Moore for the Chiefs last year, you can drink now, fans.
I was going to say that's a good one.
Then you're in fact, Sky Moore lost the Colts game for the Chiefs last year because he muffed 2 punts.
Right.
You just can't do that, especially with this Arizona team. I'd rather have a guy who just fair catches everything. Who was the guy who used to do that all the time? Devin Ross.
Devin Ross fair caught everything. And last year, Anthony Simpson tried to take that mold by saying, I will fair catch everything. I'm just telling you, there's nothing more infuriating than watching 10 yards in front of somebody and you're fair catching it automatically. Stop doing that.
I can tell you the one thing more infuriating. A muffed punt. A
That's
drop
true.
punt. Yeah, so.
Bug right.
Yeah, so that's my guess for Speedy Luke. But yeah, I think it's ridiculous. Again, Speedy Luke is skinny and small, and that's part of it. But height has nothing to do with durability. Nothing.
It doesn't. Brad Allis and I prove this every single day.
How many games Cedric Steptoe miss?
None. I can't remember never hurt.
How many games Mike Thomas miss?
Can't think of any.
JJ Taylor might be a bad example, but
right.
Again, as long as you're not 5'6", 130, but you're 5'6", 170 is built a lot thicker for most human beings than 6 foot 180, which is what most DBs are. So yeah,
Brad, I'm putting your
can hang on to the ball. He should run back kicks. If not, let's get someone else out there.
Brad Allis, I'm putting your feet to the fire right now. Over or under 5 wins for the Wildcats.
Over.
BetMGM, check it out.
I said over the whole time. I just said don't be shocked if Arizona doesn't look like a much better football team and still winds up 5-7.
I will be shocked. All right, Brad, when was the last time you went to Circle K? When did you take all the gremlins?
Yesterday.
What did you get?
What did I get? Probably a water and a Gatorade and a protein bar.
There's nothing. Look, Brad Allis has been one of the titans in the Arizona sports scene for well over 50 years now. If it's good for well over, let's see, Brad, when did you start, Brad? I'm going to hold on. I'm going to say,
writing?
When did you start when did you start writing?
It's part-time, 94.
All right, Fiesta Bowl year then.
Yeah, 94, 95. I did a few things for Catrix. Really.
All right, so Brad's going on about 30 years right now. And you know what's helping sustain Brad through all of this? Circle K. And I mean this seriously. Now, check it out. Make sure you're not missing out on all this great stuff. Right now, text PHNX 31310 to join their SMS subscriber club and get a buy one, get one free 32-ounce Polar Pop Circle K. All right, Brad.
If you really want to go, and this is honest to God, Circle K truth, my wife is addicted to Polar Pops.
There's nothing wrong with that.
When I covered high school sports for the Miranda News and to lesser extent Tucson Citizen, if I wasn't on a turf field, I probably had a Polar Pop.
And you know what? And that's why you sustained so long.
Thirst Buster.
Right. Oh, Thirst Buster. And all right. Let's talk a little bit now. By the way, Jacob Franklin got on me yesterday for talking about Circle K. Jacob Franklin, you were right about this. Let's talk a little bit about fan bases now. I want to get your take on this. The one thing that I've noticed, and again, this is 100% Twitter related, is that no matter what you think of the move to the Big 12 or the Pac-12, whatever the case may be, Big 12 fans certainly seem to care more about their teams than Pac-12 fans do. Would you agree?
Yes. If you listen to the podcast I put up yesterday, I said one of the things that killed the Pac-12 was the lack of fan base / being in pro cities. There are very few. There are diehard fan bases across the Pac-12, but they're not as big. But again, some of that is if you're in Tempe. 25 years ago, it was at worst the number 2 show in town behind the Suns. At worst. And ASU football may have been number 1 30, 40 years ago. Now you're 4th, maybe 5th if you really like hockey. If you're in Stillwater, Oklahoma,
that's it.
You might not even watch the NFL.
Right.
If you are in Lubbock, Texas, Lawrence, Kansas, yes, they're KC sports fans. They have one team they root for. They root for the Chiefs and the Jayhawks. Mm-hmm. Manhattan, Kansas is even they're dedicated.
They root for Bill Snyder.
Yeah, Optimus Klein. You see that with to a lesser extent, there are still some great fans. And Washington fans are great, but there are other options there. And that's the other thing is for whatever reason, apparently if you live where it's warm and near a beach, you can't be a college sports fan. But if you live in a place that is also warm and there's only hunting and fishing, you can be. I don't get that argument that there's too much to do in LA, but not in, I don't know, Atlanta, where Georgia fans.
Agreed.
It's more of the transitive nature of the West Coast. And, we're starting. That's one reason we're starting to see Arizona basketball have an elite fan base, because all the guys who are now 30, 35, who grew up with it the whole time are like, oh, I want to be like Carolina. I want to be like.
Right.
But if you're in Tempe, the odds are your family may have only been there for 10 years.
Well,
if you're in Phoenix.
And look at it this way. Stanford has no fans. Cal has no fans. UCLA and USC fans don't really show up. Same with ASU fans. Utah fans show up. Colorado fans are going to show up. Oregon State fans, I give Oregon State fans a lot of credit. But in the Big 12, everybody shows up right there. They all have fan bases. That's what's different.
Well, the problem with Oregon State, their real fans are a lot like these fan bases. The problem is, you're in an area where you're still splitting with other fan base. I mean, you're splitting with Oregon fans, with Trailblazer fans, with Seahawks fans. Whereas again, you're in Stillwater, Oklahoma. It's you and it's the guys who root for the Sooners, and that's it.
Right.
If you're in Kansas, save for those 25,000 Wichita State basketball fans, you're rooting for Kansas or K-State. You have where your loyalties are split in other places, and on the West Coast, again, a lot of the people in Stillwater are third and fourth generation Cowboy fans, Oklahoma State Cowboy fans. That's not necessarily true if you live in Oakland. You may not even realize Cal plays college basketball because you're a Warriors fan.
All right. By the way, I've noticed I got something I'm going to show on my phone right here. This is the most overpriced thing. This came up on my Facebook memories. People, you can see this right here. See this chair. Brad, how much would you pay for this chair?
I paid $1,600 for it, sitting right next to me.
This chair is on sale for $1,500. If you are out there and you would pay $1,500 for this, you have a lot more money than I will ever have in my life. Brad, that is a wretched looking device right there.
Oh, it is ugly, and my guess it's some kind of designer, which I don't care about. I have a couch and love seat. I spent a lot less than that on from the same store, I believe.
Right. By the way, Rich.
Hey, Rich, what you want me to mention? Pittsburgh State, the Gorillas too?
Well, the best player by a mile from Emporia State is correct.
Come on, Brad. The minute you mention it,
Larry Allen.
Okay, yeah.
Larry Allen, best player all time. All right, Mike and Brad, Arizona dethroned Blue Blood UCLA in the Pac-12, and hopefully we dethrone another Blue Blood Kansas. I will say this. Kansas is going to be a lot harder one to topple than UCLA, because at Kansas is essentially Arizona almost on steroids. Is that fair to say there, Brad Allis?
I've been to a game and people are going to be mad at me, but I've been to a game at Fog Allen. It was the best sporting environment I've ever been to.
Were you there with Rob Lance?
No, I went. I saw the 2003 comeback blowout game, the Salim game.
Oh, just be there for the second half. That's all you need.
Into the first half, they somehow went up over 10. Again, I've been to Pauley. In the late 90s, it was really good. It's anywhere. It's nothing to write home about.
When Jim Herrick had things rolling, it was pretty good.
Yeah, I was there for some of the Lavin games, and it was a little crazy, but the students were really good. But no, it's just another building. I mean, maybe not at the renovations.
All right.
First of all, Fog Allen Fieldhouse it's a field house. It looks like a big, really high-tech giant barn. And the fans are rabid. And again, I've got a bunch of KU grads in my family. It's a rabid basketball fan base, just like they're a rabid football fan base for the Chiefs. There's a reason those are two of the best home field advantages in the respective sports. I've never been to the Dean Dome. I've never been to Assembly Hall. I've never been to those. But if you're telling me there is and again, McHale's great. McHale is awesome. But if you're telling me there's a place better than Fog Allen, I need to see it.
All right, Brad Allis, before we sign off here, where can they find you? What are you up to right now? Talk to the people.
WSR Brad on Twitter. Just put up a podcast late last night. My eulogy to the Pac-12, where I talk about, basically I point fingers. Everyone's pointing fingers at Robbins or this guy or that guy. It's to paraphrase the Rolling Stones, after all, it was you and me. After all, it was many people led to the demise of the Pac-12. But it starts with Larry Scott. I also decided to play around with AI and had it actually write a literal eulogy to the Pac-12.
How'd it go? Was it pretty good?
It was really good. Yeah. I read it as the intro to the podcast. I'm hoping to get 2 or 3 out a week now. Think with the kids in school, things have settled down a little bit. It's still crazy because some idiot decided to convince his son to play club baseball and middle school football, and his daughter to try club volleyball, and
what a moron that guy is.
Trying to also save a little league, and so it's busy. So hoping to get 2 or 3 out. I'm if you notice, they're going to sound a little more rustic. I'm not editing out a lot of the ums and ahs and breaths.
Good, you shouldn't, Brad. We like that here. I repeat half the things. Brad Rich on here, our good friend Brad Rich. By the way, I don't like 2 first names. Likes making fun of me all the time for repeating things. That's part of the charm, Brad. Take pride in it.
I just don't like I hear my own breaths when I listen back to my podcast, but I don't notice when other people do it. So it's probably just me being.
It's just you.
Picky. So so I put it up with no edits yesterday. Hopefully you liked it.
Right.
And if you didn't, well.
And you're going to be able to catch Brad on as many post-game shows coming up as he's available to be on as well, right here on PHNX Wildcats. This is true.
As many as I can. Yeah, I don't know what the baseball tournament schedule is. We may not be playing fall ball, so that might actually play into being on more post-game shows. So
right. All right. He's the great William Brad Allis. I am Mike Luke. Jacob Franklin behind the scenes. We will talk to you tomorrow. You have been listening to the AZ Wildcats podcast.